Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be. Well, thank goodness it's Friday afternoon and another edition of Green Rush Live. Hi, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm David Rabinovitz, trusty sidekick. We got a great show for you today.
There you go. Jimmy. Thank you so much, David, for joining us as always on Friday. And we're so excited. We're going to jump right into our two very special guests. We have very exciting guests for you on this particular Friday afternoon. One is an older friend from the Boston, Massachusetts area, Marlborough, Massachusetts, if you will. His name is Jaret Christopher. He's the former CEO of Sprout Online. Jaret, great to see you.
Great to see you again, Jimmy. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it. And I appreciate you tapping me on the shoulder and tipping me off a week ago at NECANN that you had been acquired by a company that most people in the cannabis industry are familiar with. It's the company called Weedmaps. And we're so proud to happen to have their CEO, Chris Beals, joins us as well on the Green Rush Live show today. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. This is great. Exciting time to be on with Jaret.
I was going to say, and thank you so much for acquiring his company. I really appreciate that. I know I had absolutely nothing to do with that transaction, but I will certainly say thank you for that. I do want to start with Chris, if you don't mind, Jaret, but we're going to come right back to you. Why was the timing right to acquire a CRM for Weedmaps?
Well, so Weedmaps as a company, or WM Technology as we've come to be known. So we're a 13-year-old company. We're much older than most people realize. We're on track to do 205 million in revenue this year, and so we're, I believe to be the largest and most expansive software company in the cannabis space. But notably this year we went public in June on NASDAQ, and as part of our growth, we've always been, I think, a fairly heads-up company in terms of how we can expand the portfolio, how we can better support consumer businesses, because we're not just sort of the largest marketplace for cannabis goods. We also have this suite of B2B and SaaS software. And so we've been familiar with Sprout. We're integrated with Sprout, and they've been a great partner through that integration. And as we looked across the suite of the internal software we had, there's just a need for the capability to power loyalty, to help businesses sort of reactivate and retarget consumers. I mean, heck, we have this huge marketplace. We have this software, and so it just felt like a natural synergy and sort of way to expand the portfolio. And it was great that they were already integrated with us. That doesn't mean that there's not a long and exciting roadmap of other things we can do, but I would say right time in our growth, being public, we're well capitalized. We have the ability to expand quickly. And so it just felt like a great opportunity at a great time.
And Jaret, from your perspective, you started this company a few years back. How did you position yourself for this exit? Or was that a strategy? You always had that in place that perhaps when Weedmaps or WM Technology was ready, you would be ripe, your business would be ripe to be acquired?
Jimmy, I think there's a tremendous amount of synergy between Sprout and Weedmaps on many fronts. The focus of our companies in helping drive revenue, helping drive sales into a dispensary or online through e-commerce. It's just such a natural fit in terms of the technology that Sprout has built and what Weedmaps has developed over the last 13 years.
There you go. David, I gave you a whole bunch of questions. Do you got one ready to rock?
No, I don't, Jimmy. I got the list in front of me. I'm following along.
All right. Well, I've got it. I've got a question for you. One of the things that I find intriguing about Weedmaps in particular, when people talk about getting into the cannabis industry, a lot of times they talk about the plant touching parts of the industry, whether the grow or the retail dispensary or even a medical side or even a lab side.
But in your case, this is an ancillary company that is kind of the middleman, if you will, between a transaction. Is this for someone who is also in an ancillary marijuana related business officially? I'm finding this great that you were able to go public successfully, and now you're starting to go into the M&A world. Are you targeting more businesses? Are you going after more of a business to business focus for WM Technology now that you're public?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny is we've always been, I think, very focused on how we can help cannabis businesses. That's retailers, brands, doctors and more medical states, how we can help them grow and be successful. And a lot of our early growth strategy was the natural offshoots around having this large cannabis marketplace, which was the most and is the most efficacious way for them to reach consumers, to advertise to consumers, to increase reach with consumers. And so a lot of it was the natural offshoots of having that marketplace. Well, probably they need help with like delivery and logistics software. They probably need help with, if we're going to do all this work cleaning up their data to make it such that a consumer can shop, browse, and decide what to purchase, let's help them power e-com on their own website. And so, I think a lot of our focus is on expanding that portfolio, but really I think it's centered on, and this is some of the, I think some of the really interesting aspects of what we can do with Sprout is, how do we help them better understand how to cost effectively deploy capital? How can we sort of take online actions and tie it out to offline actions and sort of some of the more technical things that frankly we haven't seen done outside of the cannabis space. And so I think we'll be breaking ground in the cannabis sector in ways that haven't been done with other consumer goods. So that's all really exciting. But I don't want to give short shrift to the fact that there's still a ton we can do to make that Weedmaps.com, that consumer experience, more navigable, more shoppable. And so we're investing heavily in that side as well.
There you go. Okay, David, you've had a few minutes. Have you found a question you'd like to add?
I do, Jimmy, from your list. I have some others as well. But so
Good.
Do you think Weedmaps will ever get into the plant touching side of the business?
No, never. So we are not I should emphasize, we are not a plant touching company. We provide software and services to these businesses. I think there's sort of an overarching principle, which is we're really in a relationship of trust, especially as we've leaned into this sort of how can we be a success partner for these businesses. And people don't want to see their partner in success become their competitor. And so I think, out of is a reflection of, I think, the position we've taken and the trust that these businesses have put in us to help them grow. It just is not a natural step, and frankly just doesn't fit with what we're well suited to do, which is make good software and do good data solutions to go into the touch the plant side. That being said, I think we have a very big policy team, and we're very active in a number of states so that we can take what the rules and regulations are on the ground and build it into the software to help these businesses compete in these marketplaces. So in that aspect, we really are focused on how the touch the plant aspects work, but it's so we can make better software for those businesses.
So what do you think Weedmaps will look like? Like, what's the vision in your mind? What's Weedmaps going to look like 3 to 5 years down the road?
I think it is a sort of let me think of the right way to say this. It will sort of be the go-to destination for businesses, brands, and retailers to increase their revenue, to augment their demand. So how do I get more consumers coming in? How do I get the people who shopped with me a month ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, to come back in, to spend more? How the go-to destination for consumers who are confused. What's Delta 8? What's Delta 10? What are all these new products? Wait, you're telling me they make a tincture for this now? The place where they're going to be able to go and not just see products to buy, but actually go through and be guided to what's going to be the right product for them, what's going to help them with their medical condition, or what's not going to make them feel paranoid as a recreational or adult use user. And then separately, increased offerings for brands. We provide a pretty substantial or probably the best way for brands to sort of build voice and affinity with consumers. So expanding that piece and data solutions. Those are really kind of the big pillars that we're built upon for the next 3 to 5 year window.
Jaret, I got to ask you the question. There's so many other CRM platforms out there in the cannabis space. What differentiates yours from others?
Sure. Thanks, Jimmy. So Sprout has always taken a holistic approach to building out our CRM solution. So we have customer relationship management, which is really the core platform. And then we've built an entire suite of marketing solutions around it, creating this all-in-one or end-to-end CRM type solution. So we're one of the very few that has not just CRM functionality, true CRM capabilities, but also omni-channel marketing such as SMS or MMS marketing, email marketing, push notification. We're soon going to be rolling out native application, loyalty, and a number of other marketing tools.
And of course, as we all know on this call, and anybody who's watching, this industry is probably the most regulated, certainly the newest regulated and most compliant industry that's out there. One of the things we talk about all the time here as a media company is teaching the industry that you can control your own message and share that with your already existing database, because that to me is the one thing that is available to the cannabis industry. I'm taking that you guys take advantage of that as well. Am I right?
Absolutely. So we've built a number of compliance modules that are inherent within our CRM application. So we help our clients make sure they're implementing compliant marketing campaigns and solutions.
With the new all sorts of new technology being introduced into the media world, one are these cute little QR codes that pop up on videos these days. Is that something that you guys have been looking at? I think they call them enhanced product listings, and you can actually pop the QR code on and it takes you right to a buying opportunity.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Jimmy. So QR codes are nothing new. They've been around for a very long time, but since COVID, they've really reemerged as a marketing tool and solution. So we've taken full advantage of that opportunity, and we've integrated QR codes within our application. It's both being used by our dispensary clients, and then Chris had mentioned we're also focused on brands as well. So our brand clients are incorporating QR codes within their packaging in other forms to be able to capture consumer information and engage with their customers.
Here's the $1 million question, guys, about federal reform. What's your read on it? Chris, I'm going to go with you. I mean, I keep hearing things and then nothing happens. And I'm hearing things and then nothing happens. I guess that's not that much dissimilar to everything in politics. Not that we can control what goes on in DC, but I would guess as a company the size of yours, what is your feeling about the initiatives that are going on in Washington, DC right now?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We, as I mentioned earlier, we have what I think is the largest and most efficacious policy team out there, but we primarily focus on state and local work. We do some federal work, but that balance is a reflection of where we can be most effective in helping to shape functioning legal markets. And this is something we can get into separately, but most state legalized cannabis markets still have the majority of consumer demand met on the illicit side because they don't have enough retailers. They have issues with taxation. They have issues with restricting certain category types, THC limits, not allowing edibles. We can get into all that. But as it relates to the federal side, look. Our pretty strongly held feeling is that none of the federal efforts right now will pass during the first term of the Biden administration, and I think there's a bit of a slog if in the next administration afterwards, whether that's Biden or somebody else. I think it's going to be a slog to get something passed at that juncture, and there's nuanced reasons why that is, but right now I think it's a good talking point. It's a good way for folks heading into midterm elections to maybe make themselves look a little younger, a little hipper. But at the end of the day, President Biden has not, I'm trying to think of a delicate way to put this, but during the 80s and 90s was, for all intents and purposes, the Democratic face of the war on drugs for periods of time. And I don't think that a leopard can change its spots so quickly, as they say. But there's also the fact that, look, something like safe banking, it hasn't been brought up for committee hearing. You go to committee, it passes out of committee to floor, and that sort. If it can't even be brought up for committee vote, why are people so bullish that it will happen? And I think there's some interesting stuff happening behind the scenes where, I think some segments of the Democratic caucus don't want to see something like safe banking pass without criminal justice reform and that sort of thing. There are other members of the Democratic caucus who, frankly, anything beyond sort of banking is too much for them to stomach. And so I think you take even like sort of the mildest end of the spectrum of the federal bills, and there's serious roadblocks to anything moving.
David, you got another one?
I do, but it's in a different topic. So I'm.
We're talking about weed business. What different talking? What topic are you at?
Here we go. So you guys went public via a SPAC, and I bought shares in that. I think it's a good investment, and I think it's going to be a great long-term investment. But SPACs have lately all of a sudden fallen out of favor. Are you happy you went the SPAC way? And what were your considerations between doing a SPAC versus a conventional IPO?
Yeah. So I should say, in a past life, I was a lawyer. In a long past life, I was a lawyer who worked on some early SPAC transactions. And the SPAC as a vehicle has gone through an interesting pathway. I think the funny thing is there's a certain, in SPAC versus IPO, I think there's some really good cases where a SPAC makes sense over an IPO. And without getting into all of those, in our case, we were going out and wanted to curate and have a investor base of investors who had strong expertise and acumen in tech, SaaS, online marketplaces. And I think the thing we found pretty quickly when we went out and sort of had initial kind of test the waters meetings was a lot of those funds, frankly, knew nothing about cannabis. And so we'd go and we'd sit through the meetings and we'd find that we get to the end of the meeting where we should have been talking about revenue growth plans, market expansion, that sort of thing. And we'd spend a lot of time explaining why Amazon or Walmart weren't going to be selling cannabis out of their dispensary section next week, or why you couldn't grow cannabis the same as you grow fields of tobacco. And that's one of the advantages of the SPAC route is you can take a longer period of time and have more in-depth conversations with these big anchor investors. And that was a big part of the reason of why we went the SPAC route versus the IPO route. I think in terms of the hiccups and the bumps, I think there's a lot of great SPAC stories out there, DraftKings, others, where good, strong companies putting together good, strong stories and sort of, I think have everything that a traditional IPO does. I think where we're seeing some of the issues are some of these newer SPAC stories and things are coming out. The SPACs have been raised and the SPAC sponsors are looking for targets, and let's just say it's not a target-rich environment. And so you have to maybe dig a little deeper in the sleeve of companies that are out there. And so I think that's where we're seeing some of the hiccups coming with some of these SPACs and sort of potentially not being as accurate as they could be with projections and things.
And Jaret, with acquisitions comes the word transition. I would think that the last few days have been kind of a whirlwind for you and your group. How has a transition going, and what has been the reaction from some of the people that have been working with you for a few years in your own home office there?
Yeah. So first off, hats off to Chris. I mean, he has just built a phenomenal business. He's brought in top talent across the entire organization. It's been a very seamless transition where we've hit the ground running. We're already, very much integrated in many facets of the business and very much rowing in the same direction. And, our team at Sprout, has felt very welcome, at WM Technology and just really, so excited to be here and be part of this journey.
Yeah. And WM Technology, it doesn't have the same ring as Weedmaps, Chris, but I get the reason why. Branding is branding. Are you going to get used to the fact that people are still going to refer to your company as Weedmaps, no matter how much you try to make it WM Technology?
Well, it's really WM Technology is actually sort of the parent. It's a reflection of the fact that there's really two apps to the business. There's Weedmaps, then there's WM Business. There's sort of the SaaS solution set that we have, and the people there are saying, well, I use WM Store, or I use WM Retail, or WM, these sort of things. And so it's just the umbrella holder for sort of the breadth of things. But half of that is Weedmaps, and yeah, that is our name, that is our origin and our history, and that is that kind of unstoppable kind of consumer marketplace side. So yeah, it's we accept all names, well, the good ones at least.
I think it's 110. And I know as much as I'd like to sit here and say, so guys, how much was the deal for? You're not releasing that just yet, right?
That's right. That's right.
I had a feeling that was going to happen. Listen, is there anything that we should look for from WM Technology or from Weedmaps that we will be seeing in the coming months as far as a business strategy go, unless you don't want to share that? But it seems like this is just the beginning of merger and acquisition time for WM Technology.
Yeah, look, I think we're we have a really strong engine for growth internally. Part of the reason that Jaret and the Sprout team made such good sense to kind of bring into the fold was it was a lean, hungry team that was kind of executing and driving forward. And I think that for us, we're as opposed to blindly kind of engaging on an M&A strategy, we're growing fast. I mean, we've added almost 200 people this year internally, and so there's a lot of strong internal growth. But yeah, we're keeping our heads up, and we're actively looking at areas where we can kind of do bolt-on acquisitions that add. But in no means is it sort of a kind of a blind let's grab anything out there. So I think we're being selective, but definitely taking advantage of the fact that we have a really big war chest. We're a highly profitable company. And we've got a good framework, and in terms of some really strong leaders and folks within the company, that's a good landing place for sort of acquired companies to come in and grow even faster.
Well, fantastic, guys. We're a little past our usual 420 break. As you know, the traditional 420 break, a lot of people don't know that started, in California and San Rafael, California, specifically, with a couple of kids, the Waldos that used to meet at the Louis Pasteur statue, all that stuff. One of them was friends with the Dead, and then the Dead grabbed onto it. Everybody knows the origin, but what you probably don't know, and I think Jaret from this area might have a better shot at remembering a certain artist out of New Hampshire called Jonathan Edwards, who had a song called Shanty. It's my version of 420 on the East Coast. So as we connect both coasts, we usually take our break at 420. We allow Jonathan Edwards to sing one of my favorite songs, Shanty. But right now, I do want to thank both of you for joining us here on a very busy week at the end of your week. Congratulations, Jaret. Congratulations, Chris, on a great acquisition. We look forward to seeing the growth of both your companies, now one company, and we look forward again to keeping in touch with you because, as I say all the time, we're all in this together, and it is a whole new world of weed. And that's what this plant was put on this earth to do, was to bring us all together. And my job, I continue to do, I think, is to connect both coasts. And thank you for allowing us to showcase an example of that on our Green Rush show.
Great. Well, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, David.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. everybody. There's nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car. I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean. I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on every night and day. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
The $3 gadget. It's the entrepreneurial's dream, cannabis, when you get right down to it. How did you ever come up with the idea for this one, Greg?
Long story short, I was actually using, I had a pipe, and I would sit by my window because I didn't want to stink up my neighbors. And I would try to cover it up with things like coins. I actually had a metal Eagle Scout pendant that I would put on top of it so it would snuff out that flame so I wouldn't have to dig out resin and things like that. And it actually fell out the window. And it was the day I learned that my contract job was ending, and I was all upset. It fell out the window, and I'm like, damn it, why couldn't it just attach to my hand? And then it sparked in my head, and I was up till about 4 a.m. on a whiteboard drawing out different things, trying to engineer it, trying to put out all the benefits and perks of it, how we could sell it. I brought out a tape recorder, and I was just like talking to myself for the next 3 hours. And then I talked to a friend about it, a trusted friend who confirmed it was actually a good idea, and I wasn't just going crazy. And then we went right to lawyers. We were told we couldn't talk to anybody. Don't talk to your mother, your grandmother, your wife about it. And then a year and a half later, we're here. And through the pandemic, manufacturing was very difficult. But yeah, we figured it out luckily, and we're moving. Things are great.
So why don't I walk you through it? Once you get the machine and you unpackage it, you have to connect it to Wi-Fi. Once you connect it to Wi-Fi, the app actually walks you through what the next steps are. Filling one of the buckets with water, putting in your cartridge, priming the pumps, and then you press a button and it mixes the water with the nutrients and it fills the grow bucket. Once the grow bucket is full, you just insert the little pod, you put your seed in, and you're good to go. You really have to do nothing for the next week. So we have a light sensor in there that can actually sense how much light the plant is receiving. And then at the end of the day, if it's still missing 6 hours of light, then you can turn the light on. We have a humidity sensor, we have a temperature sensor, We have sensors on all the pumps so that we can understand how much has gone, both water and nutrients. We have level sensors that allow us to understand how much water is in each one of the buckets, because there are 3 buckets and they all do different things. And through all that information, we can also understand how much water the plant is consuming. We have a button in the front. That's the only user interface that you have on the machine. Lights in the front that tell you the state of the machine. Lights on the top that tell you how much water is in each bucket. And then on the back, as you can see, we have outlets that are software controlled. And so, for example, if you live in a very dry, hot environment, you could actually plug in a humidifier and an AC and say on the app, like outlet 1 has a humidifier, outlet 3 has an AC, and then the machine understands when to turn the humidifier and the AC on at different times. And so we're making dumb devices that you can buy on Amazon for 20 bucks, and we're giving them all this intelligence because we have the ability to sense and act on the environment. And then at the end, one of the things that you have to do is just harvest the material. And so the device comes with these little snips. They're Teflon coated and everything. It comes with gloves. It comes with jars. And the app walks you through the process of harvesting the product. And then once you're done, you put it in these jars. And once you have it there, you can keep it up to 6 months.
And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there with us. You're with us in the Green Rush. We do this every Friday from 4 to 6 Eastern time. We've got 3 more guests we brought in. And if you were watching some of the videos during the break, you've seen all 3 of them. We've got Carl nodding his head up and down. In fact, I believe the video of him just finished up. Greg is with us, and Alex of Bud's Goods, and we're gonna go. As soon as I untie my tongue, we're going to have a great discussion with these 3, but we asked Jaret and Chris to hang out for a couple more minutes. We had a few questions that came in we wanted to pose to them. So, Chris, you folks California has had a lot of challenges. They had a lot of unlicensed folks who were selling. Took them a lot of years to get their regulations in place. And then once they did, there were a lot of people who just didn't want to go get the licenses or were having trouble getting licenses. So they just stayed in the market. They've been open for years. Many of them had gotten listed on Weedmaps. There was a point where I believe the California Cannabis Commission wanted Weedmaps to take down the unlicensed sellers. Weedmaps didn't comply right away. Then the feds sent a subpoena. How did all of that turn out? And knowing what you know now, how would you handle it again in the future?
Yeah, well, so that subpoena has been withdrawn. We actually disclosed that in our last quarter. So the DOJ withdrew that subpoena. Really a great outcome, something that I was excited about. But I think reflective of the fact of, where we are as a software company and the fact that we are incredibly leaned into compliance. I think more so than tech companies and almost any other industry. In fact, every business to be on the platform now has to go through what we call our enhanced verification process, where their licensure has to be verified and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, the California thing was a kind of an ancient history thing. California is really an interesting tale and a unique one for how it came to legalize, because, California had under Prop 215 medical cooperatives for, essentially 20 years. And when Prop 64 passed, which was the adult use initiative, everyone widely believed that all the Prop 215 shops would be welcomed into the Prop 64 framework. And in fact, there was this sort of grandfathering that allowed them to continue to operate until 2019 under the Prop 215 framework. Anyway, this is getting a little complicated, but actually when there was that letter and that back and forth, it was with respect to the Prop 215 operators, and it was still during that grandfathering period where they were allowed to sort of operate under the Prop 215 period. I think the unfortunate thing then and still now is that local control continues to be a problem. California, the Los Angeles County had probably about twice as many Prop 215 operators as the entire state of California currently has under the Prop 64 system. And there's a number of jurisdictions that are going to issue more licenses, but it's been a long and laborious process. I think something that Massachusetts has seen, for instance, if you look at some of the cities that have said they were going to move forward with even hitting the minimum flooring that's required under the state ballot question, the state still hasn't hit the minimum required number of licenses it's supposed to under that framework. But all that being said, in the California case, I think it was, nuanced. It was definitely a learning opportunity, but we'd kind of already publicly made the announcement after working closely with the state regulators that we're going to make this transition to everyone having to go through the enhanced verification process. It was just, it was frankly complicated, and it was sort of tough as we tried to figure out who had licensure, who didn't, because so many people were strung out in various stages of the licensing process. And so many local jurisdictions were sort of, I guess, moonwalking towards getting a legalization framework in, that it was a really complicated time. And so while California still needs to get a lot more licenses issued, and it's working towards it, LA may issue another 1,000 licenses in the next quarter or two. I am very happy to have kind of that kind of unsteady transitional period in the window where, I think everyone was trying to figure things out.
Sounds like it only makes you stronger because now you know how to navigate that particular issue. Hopefully it doesn't come up in another state.
Well, with the enhanced verification, it won't, simply because, the businesses have to go through that process to be on the platform. But the other reason it won't is because California is really a unique circumstance, because it had this long tail Prop 215 system, but all those people weren't being automatically grandfathered in. Whereas you look at New York, New Jersey, some of these other places, the existing medical operations are, going to have adult use licenses as well. So it really doesn't become an issue.
Cool. And now I'd like to introduce the other folks on the screen, on the Zoom call, on the Green Rush Live show. And it's three entrepreneurs, three guys that have created award-winning inventions. They're entrepreneurs. And I think this is one of the greatest things about the cannabis industry is it really does feed the inventor, the creative mind, coming up with something different and new. And whether it's a under $10 item or an item that may be a little bit higher priced. And then we also have Alex Mazin with us, who is the winner of the New England Cannabis Convention's Best Cannabis Company in New England Award. And Alex, first of all, from Bud's Goods, thank you again. Great to see you again. Interviewed you earlier this week on In the Weeds. Thank you again for joining us. First of all, let me go right back to Alex and say, when you heard your name and you heard that you guys had won, what was your reaction?
I was shocked. I mean, since I've been on this journey to build a company here in Massachusetts, I always envisioned a cannabis company being synonymous with New England, because up until that point, everyone was always talking about cannabis and West Coast cannabis or Colorado cannabis, but it's never, ever been put in the context of East Coast or Northeast or New England. And so in my mind, I sort of had that vision of creating a New England cannabis brand. And the first thing that sort of came to me when we found out that we were awarded, Best Cannabis Company in New England, I just felt like this was something I manifested in my mind, and it's just coming to fruition. The only difference was I thought it would be a company, and now it's the company that I'm building. So just really honored, but I also, I know we can continue to do even more and better. And so I'm just excited that we were even acknowledged to being a New England company that does cannabis. So I'm not letting it get to my head. And I know there's so much more we can do as a company, but, I think with that said, I have acknowledged that we are a New England cannabis company, and the dream is becoming the reality, and I got to keep moving forward.
Okay.
Until the West Coast acknowledges that Northeast or New England companies do exist.
Yeah, and I think Chris had to leave, which is certainly fine. We're so thrilled to have Chris with us from WM Technology, and Jaret, you could stay as long as you'd like, Jaret. Just so you know, might even be able to give these guys some insight on how to position their new companies to be acquired by a major company like WM Technology. I have a feeling every single one of them on here. Look at the grin that Carl has on his face right now. Carl, walk us through your product, Anaboto, Boundless Robotics. All you got to do is add water, and you too can have a beautiful female cannabis plant in your living room with that wonderful pungent smell that perhaps may be a little filtered out. Isn't that one of the neatest things about your device?
Yeah, Jimmy, you're right. And first of all, Alex, congratulations. And I'm totally into making New England a powerhouse in the cannabis industry. My background is in robotics and artificial intelligence, and we designed a cannabis growing robot for home. And so essentially, it uses a vision system. It looks at how the plant is growing, and it adds the nutrients accordingly. And like Jimmy just said, the light, which looks like an actual light that you would have in your living room, has a filtering system so we can manage the odor. The vision system lives in the lamp, and the lamp also has different spectra of light, so we can actually make the plant grow or flower when we need it, but it is completely hands-off. All the user has to do is add water, and that is it, and you can get some of the highest quality stuff, pesticide-free, from the comfort of your living room.
There you go. And Jacques from Bowl Buddy, a completely different side of the perspective of entrepreneur, if you will, because the Bowl Buddy is very reasonably priced, right? Right, Greg? You did a little demo right before you came on video and in the break. Can you walk us through the product that you've got?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, it's man, first of all, though, Carl, I got to get my hands on something like that. When I was at NECANN, I was looking for like the everyman grow system, and I was surrounded by people who wanted to do like high volume dispensary stuff. I'm like, where's the thing I can just put in my den, man? Let's go. All right. So yeah, when I can afford it, I'm your customer. I'm going for it. But dude, all right. So anyway, Bowl Buddy, right? So this is a little bit of an everyman's tool. I don't know if it's going to focus on it. There we go. So that's all it is, right? And it's got a little dish on the bottom. The whole idea here is you put it on your ring finger and pinky finger, just like this, right? And if you're the average person, chances are the bottom of your lighter, if you smoke out of things like glass pipes, anything, bongs, things like that, chances are the bottom of your lighter has a really ashy tip to it, because every time you want to put out your product in between hits, and rather than have it smoldering on the counter or whatever, you want to put it out. So you shove your lighter in there, causes all kinds of problems. You're going to be packing up that gross oily resin. You have to dig it out later. And the whole idea here is, so I got my pipe right here, right? So the whole idea, assuming that the filter is going to work with me on this, is when rather than shove your lighter, a lot of people shove their thumbs in there, they cover with their palm, they get burned. When you're done taking that hit, you just flip your wrist over, you cover up the bowl just like that. If I can get it in there we go. Yeah. And it's like a candle snuffer for a pipe. The whole idea is it makes that airtight seal. After a couple seconds, you lift up your hand and the flame just goes out naturally because you starved it of oxygen. And the beauty of it is now you're not tamping down any of that stuff. People keep bringing up things like the toker poker and stuff like that. And those are great. They're great tools, but you're still tamping down that product, and that's going to make an awful, gross, sticky mess you have to deal with. And I'm even, since I come up with this and I'm presenting it to people, I'm meeting more and more people who will just throw their pipes away because they don't want to deal with cleaning it. And yeah, it's super reasonably priced. We sell them for $3 a piece, or
$3. Wait.
That's it.
$3 a piece. I love that.
Yeah, and that's not even the best part. I mean, best part is that they're made in USA. They're made right in Leominster, Massachusetts. Yeah. So it's everything we do is made in USA. We're not going to change that. I mean, we've been pressured. Even in NECANN, we had a lot of people coming up to us asking us about China, this, that. And like, I just have no interest. Like, I want it to be made in USA forever, everything we do. And our patent is good for lots of future endeavors too. I mean, we have so many ideas on how we can expand this, make attachments to it. And man, NECANN, it was our first big event. We've been waiting a year and a half or more for something like that to really expose the world to what we're doing. And the response was overwhelmingly positive. Like we've had even a hard time at some points keeping up with it because we've just been inundated with requests and responses. And it's, I don't know, it's a life changer. That event was really cool. Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, at the top of the hour, we're going to welcome in Marc Shepard, the co-founder and president of NECANN, to continue to review the show. But I got to go back to Greg. How did you come up with this invention? I mean, did you smoke a lot of weed right before you came up with it? I mean, because it's pretty creative.
Yeah. So I was really tired of having to dig it out. I mean, I was going through paperclip after paperclip, and to me, that's still the unsung hero of pot tools, the humble paperclip, right? And I actually it was a metal Eagle Scout pendant of all things that I was using to cover up my bowl to do exactly that. And it was metal, so it probably wasn't very healthy for me. I probably had zinc and stuff that was burning off in that thing. There was one day, it was actually the day I learned I was losing my job. My boss had called me and said that they weren't going to renew my contract. They gave me like 3 months notice because they loved me so much, but they were just like, I was a little sad. And Yeah, I put my bowl down and my little metal Eagle Scout pendant just slid off the top out the window, and I've never seen it again. And I just got so frustrated with that. I'm like, why couldn't that just be attached to my hand? I wouldn't lose it. And that's when it just clicked on me. And that little whiteboard you see behind me is, I just went crazy and I drew all over it. I had a little recorder out that I recorded everything I could think of at the moment. And yeah, then I brought it to my cousin to just make sure it was actually a good idea. Like, is this something we could actually pursue? Is this something, am I just going crazy here? Or am I really onto something? He thought it was amazing. And then, yeah, we found some good patent lawyers locally in Providence. And we had to keep real quiet about it for a long time, probably like 6-8 months. We couldn't, he's like, don't tell your wife, don't tell your mom, don't tell your grandma, I don't care, don't tell anybody about it. And then once everything was secured, we could move on with figuring out manufacturing and things like that. And it was man, it's been a ride.
Does Amazon allow you to to sell those on Amazon?
Yeah, we can totally do Amazon. And the thing with us, direct sales are great. And I mean, I love direct sales, but with a $3 item, I'm going wholesale. Like, I really want to be on dispensary shelves. I mean, it is a piece of plastic. So it's heat resistant plastic, which is important to note too. It's good for up to 500 degrees. So it's not going to give off any vapors or anything. And it's a special polymer we use that has a nice little flexibility to it. If you can see that kind of bend to it a little bit. And the whole idea behind that is, if you have an odd shape, because a lot of glass and it's one of the best parts about this whole culture is that a lot of it's handmade and unique. So if it was made out of something that was really stiff, we'd have a hard time because it wouldn't be able to make that nice airtight seal reliably on all different kinds of glass. So yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, it's a great material. And honestly, I completely forgot your question. What were you saying before?
No, you did great.
You did a great job. I'm going to jump in and throw a couple at you. So just curious, were you a Boy Scout?
Yes. Eagle Scout. Yeah.
Eagle Scout, congratulations. That is for anybody who doesn't know about the Scouts, attaining Eagle Scout status is generally a very, very big deal.
And they give you a great coin, I understand.
Yeah, I actually worked professionally for them for almost 7 years. Yeah, I was all over New England. I ran a lot of stuff for them. It was cool. Yeah, interesting organization. Not without its flaws, but man, the program itself is really good stuff.
So now that you've pitched, wait, David, now that he's pitched his product, are you interested perhaps, Alex, in carrying the Bowl Buddy in the Buds Goods, the greatest New England cannabis company?
Yeah, no, I would love to maybe come up with a couple custom Buds ones. Yeah. I'm sure you're going to be getting into those things. We try to balance how smoke shop-esque we are as a dispensary. I feel like we try ourselves, but carrying a unique product like that would be of total interest. What we try to avoid is just turning into another glass shop, competing in that space. But that's a unique product, and I'd love to chat offline.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Greg at bowlbuddy.com. Spend a lot of
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome, Greg. Anyway, but the other side of it, a little higher price item is the Anaboto and Carl. And I guess the question would be, and Alex, I don't know if you know the answer to this. David, maybe you do. Can you show a live growing of a plant inside a dispensary, or is that one of those rules and regulations that they don't allow you to do? Anybody?
I don't see why not.
You mean like just video of a grow room?
No, I mean the actual see it over his right shoulder. That's the item. I mean, it looks like a living room lamp, right?
I could put that on a TV screen and, show it off. There's nothing, it wouldn't be too exciting to stare at for too long.
Right. But that's why I keep saying, can you actually
put, it doesn't grow at that type of speed where it's visible to the eye. You kind of have to look away for 12 hours and then you'll see a difference.
Right. But I guess the question is, Carl, do you think you can get those in a real plant growing inside a real dispensary? Isn't that allowed?
I'm not sure about the law. I don't think so. I think we can show it with a hemp plant, just pure hemp, no THC. And to your point, Alex, I mean, I think, one of the things that we have is we can do time lapses because we are taking pictures of the plant every 30 minutes. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, I think we cannot actually show a live cannabis plant with THC in it.
Growing the plant, at least in Massachusetts, that would fall under a cultivation license. 1 plant, 1,000 plants, it doesn't matter. The moment you start growing, it would be a cultivation operation which doesn't follow, retailers cannot do that. So
Right. There you go. So the Bowl Buddy can get in, but the Anabodo probably can't, but we can show it. So that's cool. It's pretty fascinating to me, all the different rules and regulations. And I get it. If I own a dispensary and I'm growing a real plant in my dispensary, there's going to be a knucklehead who's going to come along and just want to grab it out of the ground and, just be the idiots that we know exist in the human world and in humanity. I do want to ask you guys a couple of questions about the challenges of marketing products and including a dispensary, Alex. What are some of the marketing techniques that you use to market Bud's Goods in the area that you are located?
Oh, that's definitely been our greatest challenge since operations, because the regulations are that challenging to work around.
Yeah.
And so, not to get too far into it, I mean, we're testing everything, right? A lot of the marketing methods we can use are more older traditional marketing methods. And I think, those marketing methods really can't be measured. Like, a billboard, for example, you don't really know if it's working. You have to believe that it's working.
Right.
Where in today's world, like a standard, Facebook ad or Instagram ad, which we're not allowed to do, is fully measurable. You know exactly how many people got the impression and how many people clicked and how many people went through the sale. So, half of what we do is believing in what we are trying to do from a marketing standpoint. The second component, which we try to do, is I'm very conscious that, our retail serves our community and our neighborhood. And so it's not that important that 1 million people like a photo or that I have 100,000 followers. So the reason I'm saying this is you really just start focusing super hyper locally. So, we try to engage with the restaurants around us, with the bars around us. We try to engage with neighborhood communities. And, I think if you play your part as a business that's engaged in the community, that's all you can really do in the cannabis space. That's why I believe that many of these dispensaries that are tucked away in, let's say, industrial parks or in undesirable retail-esque locations, they're not really in a community. So it's going to be that much harder for them to connect to an audience that will ultimately be their customer. So to answer your marketing question, we are still constantly trying many different options, from print to mailers to impressions online on ads and all that. But I think what works best is how to keep people happy, because word of mouth is the most powerful tool without a doubt.
Yeah, we got the big thumbs up and a nod from everybody else in the room. David, you know how challenging marketing is. I think you want to follow up on that.
Actually, I have a question for Greg. So in Massachusetts right now, most of the product manufacturers, and yours is not a regulated product, obviously, but they're selling direct to folks like Alex, right? How are you getting your product distributed how are you getting it into retail stores right now?
It's exactly what you're talking about. It's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of phone calls. And honestly, it's a lot of time on the roads on the weekends. I'm popping into dispensaries. I like to call them ahead of time, because I know a lot of dispensaries get inundated by salespeople and they just kind of show up on a whim. I like to give them a heads up. I try to be polite about it so they can at least know I'm coming. And yeah, just stopping by. I have these nice little boxes that I can bring down, one of each color with some contact information and a little other content in there too, so they can kind of get an idea. I like to educate bud tenders is a big thing. We do pop-up events. I'm going to be at Apothetherapeutics next weekend. And yeah, it's my third job. So finding time to get it all done is a real key. And yeah, when we talk about marketing and advertising, I mean, this is legally a tobacco product, which means that you can't advertise on Instagram, you can't advertise on Facebook, you can't do anything like that, because it's regulated under tobacco laws, which makes things very, very difficult. So yeah, it's a lot of word of mouth. It's a lot of trying to create as many personal relationships as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a joint. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to say, Greg, I think one of the things in each one of my stores, I always have someone who like is very passionate about the accessories space. And so it's, you know, my advice to you is like, I'm sure I'm not an anomaly. I'm sure every store has someone who sort of not only just oversees it, but gets a little nerdy on it, you know, from all the cool different things out there. And like, just identifying that person, even though they may not be like solely dedicated to that role, there is that one person who's like just staying on top of all the fun cannabis stuff. And, you know, like sometimes I'll see employees bring like little joint holder attachments to Xbox controllers and like, you know, at the end of the day, we're all also consumers. So, you know, we're running into our own problems that we're solving.
And that's why we were one of the most popular booths at NECANN this year, is because it's an everyman product, whether you're a dispensary owner or just the average consumer. I mean, you can relate to the problem that we're trying to solve here. I mean, we were just flooded with people. It was crazy.
Well, that's great.
I got a joint question, Greg, for you and Alex.
A joint question.
Joint question for the two of you. So right now, Massachusetts really doesn't have any distributors. If you're in the convenience store space, you hook in with a distributor who brings all your products in versus having every brand drop by and try to sell it on their own and deliver it on their own. Alex, from where you're, Greg, do you think that's an essential part of the business, that there be a middleman type distributor who can handle the distribution, getting the product to the stores, as well as introducing it? And then when you're done, I'm curious to hear from Alex whether he thinks it's better to have a similar question, better to have a central distributor, or do you like it better when every brand is coming in to call on you?
So as an independent business owner and creator of one of these things, I mean, the idea of having a middleman, it does sting a tiny little bit, right? But at the same time, I'm one person who still has, still in a lot of debt just from inventing this thing. So having that person, or having someone who's out there who can spread the word while I'm doing my other two jobs, I wouldn't be upset about it. No, I mean, to have someone out there preaching the word of Bull Buddy and getting the idea out there where I can't, especially where, I mean, I'm super local in Massachusetts right now. I'm hitting 495, just trying to hit dispensaries, right? But if someone can out there in like Colorado, or has just a different market that would expand my business, I'd be welcome to it for sure.
Cool.
There you go.
David, I will add another thing before I answer your question. So in 2015, I started my first successful venture. I had many failures prior to, as any good entrepreneur should. I started a company called Vapor Case. Back in 2015, the PAX vaporizer was just hitting the market. It was revolutionary at its time. And I ended up creating like a silicone accessory that sort of like slid over it like an iPhone case would for an iPhone. Mm-hmm. And similarly, Greg, I just went from store to store to store and just tried to push them and get them in. Eventually, I made it into enough stores where I received a call from a large accessory distributor called Green Lane. You may or may not be familiar with Green Lane. They're basically the WB Mason, or the Staples of supply goods, but for head shops. So if you're a smoke shop or a head shop, you call them, they can provide you all the papers, all the vaporizers, all the glass, and the rolling trays and the catch-all trays and the grinders, you name it. So my advice to you is, I too sold a product that was $5. The value proposition on that to the retailer was really not that it was a huge moneymaker, but that it drove sales of the PAX vaporizer. So they were able to sell a $300 device and offer what appeared to have an MSRP to the consumer of $20 that they were buying for $5. And so for $5, they were closing a $300 deal. If you can figure out a way to kind of latch it on, that will help them drive a sale, that would be something I would definitely encourage you kind of create.
Oh, yeah.
That's just the side comment. David, to your comment about distributors, Green Lane is a distributor we use. So when it comes to accessories, I think all of those things, it's very convenient and efficient to buy from one source, not just in terms of like getting that all orchestrated. If you were to buy your papers versus your lighters versus your trays versus your grinders, I mean, that's a full-time job versus, just going to Green Lane and saying, hey, I need all this. And so they can sort of orchestrate it. And companies of that scale are so good, you can eventually get into a rhythm where they know how many you're selling, so they know exactly how many you're shipping. So you come to an agreement of like how much money you want in accessory allocation, and they can kind of keep balancing it for you. So they like eliminate the need of a person to oversee all of that. But when it comes to cannabis distribution, I think one of our jobs as a retailer is to curate the best products, but also the best valued products. And I actually think that's what's going to separate good dispensaries from great dispensaries. And so I'm not totally in love with the idea of a distribution that covers all of it, because I think just like a good wine store is constantly sourcing, unique bottles or less common bottles, but they also have a great majority of the stuff like the vodka and the tequila and all those things that they're standard. So I think in a perfect world, I'd love to see a hybrid on the distribution front where you get your standard consistent products that are just needed. But I also think there's always an element on quality control that needs to occur, and also variety and selection and rarity. Because, as cannabis consumers, that like the harder it is to get your hands on something, the more desirable it is.
Kind of like our show. Anyway, hey guys, I want to thank you all for coming in and joining us on this Friday afternoon. I wish you all the best of luck. We're a little bit late going to our top of the hour break, but thank you all for coming in. And we look forward to finding out more about Bud's Goods, about Bull Body and Boundless Robotics and Anaboto in the months and the years to come. So again, thank you for joining us, and best of luck in the future. And stay tuned, because we've got Marc Shepard from NECANN coming in, as well as our friends from MCR Labs. We've got HR Adaptive coming in at the bottom of the hour, and old friend Rick Linney from Accounting Bud. So Green Rush Live continues after this. Don't go away. Hi, I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. And when I started Pro Cannabis Media 2 years ago, I wanted to make sure the cannabis industry had a professional outlet to share their stories in their own words. Now, since it all started with my podcast In the Weeds 3 years ago, I've done over 250 interviews. I've met some incredible people with a shared passion for this amazing plant. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard the line, cannabis has saved my life, cannabis has changed my life. Well, now it's your turn. We want to give you a chance to tell your own story. It doesn't even need to be related to the medicinal power of this incredible plant. Just to give you a little incentive, we will pick 5 stories to share on our live Green Rush show on Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern. If we share your story, you automatically get one of our t-shirts with that closing line I use all the time, "It's a whole new world of weed." But as the legendary Billy Mays used to say, that's not all. One of those finalists will win one of these really cool full-story cannabis storage units. It's a great way to store your cannabis in their food-grade aluminum containers. It's award-winning, child-proof, smell-proof, and has a solid contemporary design. It's a $220 value, but you can win one if we pick your story and feature it on our show. Yes, we will pick one of those 5 finalists, and they will receive this $220 value absolutely free. Now, we ask you to keep your story to under 90 seconds on video and less than 500 words in text. So come out of the cannabis closet and tell us your story, and you could win with yourstory.com. Just go on to procannabismedia.com and sign up today. You might even join us on one of our shows.
This has probably been the best weekend I've had in the past 2 years. In all honesty, it was definitely needed to get face to face and reconnect with people and just be present and
So I think there's
exposed to
one
the
very
cannabis
important
culture again, because it's
between
just
me
such a beautiful
and most of
community.
my
It's
team
key. I mean,
members
having that
and
personal
other
touch is
cannabis
what makes
accounting
a lot of our
firms,
businesses
outsourced
grow.
cannabis
And
accounting
it's so nice seeing.
with a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies, companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
This has probably been the best weekend I've had in the past 2 years. In all honesty, it was definitely needed to get face to face and reconnect with people and just be present and exposed to the cannabis culture again, because it's just such a beautiful community.
It's key. I mean, having that personal touch is what makes a lot of our businesses grow. And, it's so nice seeing the events that are coming back. Just myself, just this week, we've been here since Friday. We probably had 150 people, 200 people stop in asking about the products. So, and everybody said, we always ask them, hey, what do you think about having an in-person show again? They're like, we love it. We are so glad it's back. So obviously we all got to take precautions, but at the end of the day, it's been great. And this is hopefully one of many shows here the rest of this year. We got NECANN New Jersey, shout out to them, and then we got some shows in New York. So make sure I see all of you guys there.
This is actually our first conference we've been to anywhere. I've walked around at some, never had a booth. Exceeded my expectations by far. I got a lot of good quality leads. I was kind of thinking this would just be a practice conference for me, to be honest with you, because I've never done this before. And I was shocked at the leads I got, and some of them are, big money potentially ones. So I'm very happy with how this turned out.
It's been very good. This is our first show ever, actually. We've never been to a cannabis show ever. We started this company right before COVID, unfortunately, and as everybody knows, that kind of put a hindrance to meeting people. So dealing with people on the internet is a lot less than dealing with people in person. So people that have been following us have actually come here to see the equipment in person. It's been very nice to actually interact with people again and meet people, shake hands and see them.
We were blown away. Honestly, in the first quarter of day one, we just thought it was a huge success. The rest of the weekend was just a bonus. Happy environment. We met so many people. We're flushed with leads. It couldn't have gone any better.
Oh, it's been absolutely great. We've had such a good turnout. We're definitely going to come back, that's for sure.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
Hi, welcome back to Green Rush Live for a Friday afternoon. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. I'm joined every week by
David Rabinovitz.
And he's with us every week here on Green Rush Live. We're so happy to welcome in two guests for this half hour. We've got Alexandra Gomes. She's the marketing manager for MCR Labs. And Marc Shepard is efforting the video. But if we close our eyes, we can see his face in our heads because we've seen him running the very successful New England Cannabis Convention from this past weekend. Marc, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jimmy. Great to see you again so soon after last weekend.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, the sound bites that we've been playing throughout this hour and a half so far, or hour of the show, everybody's raving about the response that they are getting from your convention. How rewarding is that to hear for you?
It's obviously a huge relief. I guess we can certainly go with the soundbite. What, best convention in the last 18 months?
Right. That's right. Certainly the best convention in the last 18 months, because there haven't been any. But more importantly, and Alexandra is here from MCR Labs. Alexandra is someone who was also at the NECANN up in Portland, Maine. Face-to-face events in the cannabis industry are so important from a marketing perspective, are they not?
They're so important just to make that connection with people face to face. They get to ask questions that they might normally, if they had to email us or give us a phone call. It makes a world of difference. There's no replacing that face to face connection.
And what's one of the questions when people come up to MCR Labs? I'm guessing a lot of people think that it's licensed growers and licensed dispensaries that have access to MCR Labs. But the truth is, if you are even a home grower, you could come to MCR Labs and get your product tested, correct?
Right, you're totally correct, Jimmy. And that's the biggest question we do get at the booth. Can I, as a home grower or a patient or just a recreational consumer, bring something to you guys to test? And the answer is always yes. We want to make sure people have data on the products that they're consuming.
And can I ask what the fee is for any Joe who happens to be a home grower?
So our most popular test is the cannabinoid test, and that is a $50 screen.
There you go, $50. So that's a very reasonable amount. Marc, what's some of the feedback that you've heard from your show, from your own vendors that you had at the Heinz last weekend?
You know, I've seen a vast majority of people have had positive feedback. I think, you know, some of that is because that, you know, when I say it's like the first time I had a chance to be in front of people, so it is a great relief. You know, anybody who was there, obviously we weren't looking at the same number of people there as 2019, but I have heard from a decent amount of people that it probably impacted most the casual attendee, that, you know, I was like, you know, I'm not going to go in the world of Delta and Post, whatever, I'm just going to check it out. But I think most of the people who are in the industry and sort of the movers and shakers did attend. You know, I will say I did hear from a decent amount of people who are in the industry and wanted to be at that show, but did make the choice. They just said they're just not ready yet to attend an event like that. So we do know that it was lesser of that, but I think we just had a higher overall attendance than we typically would have.
And so were you happy with the turnout? Was it 50% less than expectation, 30%, or about where you had expected?
I mean, honestly, my expectations were pretty low. So they were definitely higher than my expectation. You know, as we looked at the crowd on Friday, it was actually equal to 2019, which kind of drives home that thought that, you know, the business people came anyway. Obviously, the huge reduction was on Sunday, and even Saturday were well below what we've seen. But I think the business got done, I think is sort of what I took away from the show.
Alexandra, what were your impressions of the show as far as response go?
Yeah, you know, this show is usually a really high traffic one. And I would agree with Marc. I think I saw about 75% of the usual crowd there, and Friday was definitely the busiest day.
Yeah. And I think we're all in this same boat that I don't know. I mean, I've been to one outdoor concert since the return of somewhat normalcy. And I saw maybe 5% of masks, but Marc, I got to tell you, I would say that the masking was 95%. Pretty much everybody that was inside was wearing a mask, and I think people accepted that. Did we lose him? We could have.
Marc?
I don't know. We could have lost him. But David, I don't think you made an appearance at this. Should you make an appearance? Because I'm sure that I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, I had a lot going on over the weekend, and frankly, I spoke to one of our recurring guests, Aaron Gomes, who was there. And he told me that everybody was masked up.
Yeah. Alexandra, I
I
mean,
was very impressed with how much what I heard about the masking. Somebody had gone up to, I don't know if it was a food stand or something along those lines, and didn't have a mask on. And they said, "Look, we'd love to serve you, but you need to put a mask on. Let me give you a mask so I can take your order."
Right.
And I
That's
heard
good.
nobody was pushing back. There was no, I don't want to wear a mask type business.
Yeah, that's Lord knows we've had enough of that. And Marc, Shepard had a few technical issues connecting with us, so we apologize for that. But Alexandra, since we have you, when you're in a booth at a trade show, what's the goal for MCR Labs as far as what do you get? What are your expectations going in?
So our goal is really to just connect with community as much as possible and make ourselves as accessible as possible, and kind of spread the word about our services and that they're open to anyone, and also share our educational resources that we have on our website and ones that we give out as well.
Yeah, and those were met as far as you're concerned, right?
Oh, 100%. Yes, it was a very good show for us.
Yeah. And Marc is back. And Marc, we were talking about the percentage of masks inside the Heinz, and it was upwards of 95% for the most part. I mean, we had one example of somebody going up to a food thing and not having a mask and then handing him or her a mask. As far as you know, and being at the show, there weren't any incidences as far as you know of people giving people hard times about not wearing masks.
No, and that really was my biggest fear was, sort of having to be a referee in that sort of political debate or having people feel uncomfortable. And obviously we want everyone to feel comfortable, but, you get in that there typically is not going to be a winner. Somebody's going to be furious at you for either enforcing the guideline or not enforcing the guideline. Luckily, we found that the cannabis community, as usual, to be a lot more understanding and open-minded and respectful of each other than the average, I think, group of people. And I literally did not have to deal with a single issue of that the entire weekend, which was a relief.
Now, of course, you've got another show coming up in New Jersey over October 2nd and 3rd. No rest for the weary over the next few months, right?
No, and honestly, after the break we just had, we're very enthusiastic to get back to all the cities. We miss Atlantic City. We can't wait to get to Portland, and we'll be in Chicago in December. So it's just great to be back out there.
How's the New Jersey show coming together?
It's terrific. We moved out of the ACC into one of the casino hotels to kind of create a little bit more fun atmosphere around the event. Pre-sales are actually much higher than they were for 2019, but not really a surprise. When we went there in 2019, rec hadn't been passed yet, so there weren't anywhere near as many business opportunities. But we look pretty good for New Jersey, and really looking forward to it.
I believe that we have a presenter in our Green Rush Live room. David Rabinovitz, I believe, is presenting at that show. Is that right, David?
That is correct, Jimmy. And I just looked up because I've been lax about seeing what it's going to take to get down there. It's actually a 6-hour drive from Boston. So I'm going to have to leave very early. But yeah, we're going to talk about,
it's a tough one logistically, David.
Say that again, Marc?
It is a tough one logistically. I would say consider the Acela to Philadelphia, and then it's not a bad cab or Uber ride from Philly to AC.
Now, maybe I'll think about that. Look, it's a NECANN show, and for a NECANN show, it's worth the extra logistics to get down there.
Well, I can't agree more.
So I'm going to be speaking about the business and political history of marijuana in the U.S. And every time I give that talk, Jimmy gave it with me one time in Detroit. It tends to be very well received, and we're looking forward to doing that down in Atlantic City.
Jimmy who? Oh, wait, you're right. We did one in Detroit. That's right. It was a virtual thing. Because I was like, I've never been to Detroit, and I certainly would remember if I was with you. No, I remember. It was with Earl Carruthers. We did that show with him, right?
That's correct.
Marc, why don't you give us a little bit a preview of what's coming up in Atlantic City, October 2nd and 3rd? We know David Rabinovitz is business and political history of cannabis is going to be one of the highlights, but there are others too. And I believe another friend of Pro Cannabis Media, Tiramisu Sargente, is speaking down there. Is that accurate?
Yes, and Tara's been just a fantastic, help and ally to us in getting New Jersey event going. As I'm sure you know, Jimmy, she's literally the definition of a tireless advocate, and she's going to be representing her organization, the NJBC, and talking about the ongoing battle of legalization and how to position yourself and the fight that still needs to happen and just all the work that's going to be done. And she's also going to be emceeing one of the programming rooms for the entire weekend. So, just great to have her energy and support for the event. Really, we haven't seen her now in almost 2 years, since 19. So it'll be great to be back down there. And that's what most of the programming is revolving around. It's very, very New Jersey specific. So you're talking about the medical program where it still is going now, the navigating the legal system, navigating the regulations, how to get in line for licensing, just everything about really for people in New Jersey to say, hey, it's like a boot camp. This business is here. The money's coming. How much of it is going to stay in New Jersey? And how do you position ourselves locally to keep that money from just being sent to, giant corporations outside of the state?
Right. Alexandra, does MCR Labs have a facility in New Jersey or is planning on?
We don't, and we don't have any current plans, but it is a state that we're definitely paying attention to.
But you're in Pennsylvania, right?
We are in Pennsylvania, yep, and we're working on Maine right now. So.
All right, that's cool. Did you ever think that it would be the lab that is one of the most important businesses as far as compliance go? I mean, I'm guessing that certainly the con guys knew that it's important to have labs, because testing of the product is why the legal industry really exists, and more importantly, it differentiates from the other side of the industry. So the importance of the lab in the industry takes on a whole new element, doesn't it?
It's definitely what I believe gives the industry its credibility at this point.
Yeah. And as the industry grows, I'm guessing more and more labs will come into the space. Yes.
I think 100%. Yeah, we'll definitely need to see more labs, even in the state of Massachusetts.
Right. Hey, Marc, who else might you have speaking at the NECANN event in New Jersey?
Off my head, I know we've got another local. Dr. Umer is going to make the trip down, just sort of giving that overview on cannabis as sort of a global medicinal solution for so many things. Yep. We've got a couple of really good marketing people. Andrew Douglas is talking about understanding consumer behavior with some really good data from existing markets on very important part of the industry. You can produce the cannabis, but what finished form, are people buying, and how do you market that? And then we have a lot of the usual sessions at an opening of a business. I mean, the opening of a market, insurance and cannabis. What do you need to know? How do you set up security for cannabis? How do you prepare taxes and maximize profits and expenses? Those are all going to be there. We also have a feature from another local, Nadir Pearson of the, I believe, Students for Sensible Policy, is going to be talking about the development of curriculum of cannabis courses at colleges and universities. And then, as always, we have, I think, at least 2 sessions that are going to focus on, equity and social equality, reinvesting in Indigenous and Latino communities. Always an important part of our programming, just to remind people out of the get-go that we really need to set this up as an example for how industries can actually not just do right moving forward, but actually correct the wrongs that people are still suffering from. And it really doesn't take much effort, and it doesn't take much to make those key improvements at the beginning and make this an actual program that the people who were punished and hurt by cannabis prohibition benefit from its legalization. And we'll always have that as part of all of our shows.
Yeah, and that's great. And that is always the mantra of the industry too. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about it and why I support the people that are in it, because it is the right thing to do. It is an opportunity, and it's time. And yet, you know, the other side of the frustrations on that is we still can't get anybody in Washington, D.C. to embrace this as much as we'd like it to. And, you know, that the Cannabis Administrative and Opportunity Act continues to kind of linger down there in DC, and the public comment period is now passed and all quiet on the cannabis front down in DC. And, you know, Lord knows if anybody's out there, you want to put pressure on your elected officials, get them to do something already, move this thing forward once and for all, because it really sounds like the more and more polls are being made, the more and more people are supporting this. And it's just it's not going away, right, Marc? We're here to stay at this point, right?
No, it's a progressive cause, and anybody can look it up. Progressive causes, once they start, they never go backwards, and they can be slowed, but we've already reached a tipping point. Everyone knows this. It's a decent analogy is gay marriage. The battle had already been won. The majority of people had already become acceptance of the fact that it was the right thing to do years before the government made the final legalization federally. And that's what we're seeing here. You've got a bunch of people in there counting their cards and saying, how does it benefit me to be the one to stand up and make this change? I'll just sit back and let it happen, but I won't lose any of my, backwards looking voters by being at the forefront of it. And they all just sit back and let it happen through osmosis rather than taking charge or being leaders and enforcing the will of what we all know is the majority of people in this country and has been for years.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Marc, we're going to have a couple of, we're going to continue to talk and debrief about the NECANN show in the final half hour of Green Rush Live. But I do want to thank you, and I apologize again for any technical issues that we might have had. But thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing Marc, Shepard, and the entire NECANN group down in Atlantic City over the weekend of October 2nd and 3rd. Alexandra, great to see you again. As always, we're big supporters of the lab testing. And of course, our favorite lab is MCR. It always will be. So thank you for joining us here this afternoon as well. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to bring in Rick Leneve and Scott Newman from HR Adaptive. And Scott's making his reportorial debut with a video. You're going to want to check that one out coming back. So don't go away.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
So I think there's one very important difference between me and most of my team members and other cannabis accounting firms, especially outsourced cannabis accounting firms. With a lot of the other firms, you're going to find bookkeepers or folks that were accountants for their entire career, but they were junior accountants. I've spent most of my career alongside CFOs at public companies, companies with thousands of employees, public companies. So much of my career wasn't spent in the debits and credits. It was spent with the CFO, CEO, COO of large public companies, working on strategy, working on planning and big initiatives, working on projects such as mergers and integrations. So that high level experience, along with being able to do the debits and credits and having members of my team that also have fairly senior experience and also members of the team that are junior and can do the bookkeeping at a little bit lower cost than some of the people with the experience, gives our clients a much broader depth of experience than a lot of the other firms where you're hiring someone that is just a bookkeeper and can't help with the strategy side of it, or someone that's been an executive for a long time and can only help with the strategy but can't help with the hands-on.
I'm Scott Newman with Adaptive HR. Today we are here at NECANN, day 3 in Boston at the Heinz Center. The first few days have been phenomenal. We've met with clients, vendor partners, speakers, and the excitement just getting back to live people after a year and a half. I think it's absolutely amazing to feel the energy that's there and really the excitement and the passion about the industry. So we're happy to be here and looking forward to meeting even more people today.
Hi, Dave from Pioneer Valley Cannabis Company here in Massachusetts. Enjoying the show at NECANN this year. Having a great show. I've really enjoyed working with Adaptive HR. They've been a great help to our business, helping us expand and grow.
Hey everybody, we're Outlaw Technology. We're here at NECANN 2020. It's been a great couple days. Got Dave Eagleson, the founder of Outlaw, right here. I'm Hans Dietrich, head of sales, and this is our stuff.
Anything we can do to help automate the process, so our customers are coast to coast, so we're not just here, we're also an adaptive customer, so happy to be in the industry and a lot going on.
Hi everyone, I'm Angela. I am the co-founder and CEO of Coast Cannabis. We are the first independent product manufacturer in Massachusetts, and we focus on using only organic and all-natural ingredients in our chocolate, gummies, and vaporizers. We've been working with Adaptive since day one. We love them, we love their support and their focus on small businesses and helping us navigate this ever-changing and challenging landscape. So work with Adaptive if you get the opportunity.
Pro Cannabis Media Programming and PCM TV is supported by Revolutionary Clinics, Massachusetts' #1 medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Salient Systems for Video Surveillance. You've got regulations, Salient has solutions for your security needs. And by Accounting Buds, your #1 CPA specialist for the cannabis industry. And by Artery Pay, easy, cheap, fun, and legal, just like cannabis should be.
All right, welcome back to the final half hour of Green Rush Live for Friday afternoon here on Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Jimmy Young. Every Friday, I'm joined by my good friend and
co-host David Rabinovitz.
Thank you very much. We're getting
Well,
so
I
much.
even got to say an extra word there, Jimmy. I got to say co-host this time.
Yes, you are. And you are the co-host, believe me, the co-hostess with the mostest, basically. We welcome in two friends, two guys. One you may have just seen do his reporting debut, Scott Newman from HR Adaptive. Scott, you did a really nice job. You'd never done that before, right?
I hadn't. I had not done that before. I was excited to give it a go, and I connected with a guy who helped put it together for me. I can't take credit for that, but I did put together the storyboard, Jimmy. It was more important. I just really wanted to get a chance to capture the energy of the show.
Right. And of course, joining us in our final half hour is our good friend, Rick Leneve from Accounting Buds. And Rick, you exhibited at NECANN for the first time. What was your impressions of that from your perspective?
Hey, Jimmy, David, Scott, good to see you again, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was actually the first convention that Accounting Buds has exhibited at. We created our company right before the pandemic, so I was at a couple conventions as just a participant. This is the first time I've had a chance to actually have a booth and kind of see what that was like. And I'll tell you, the experience was much better than I thought it was going to be. Having never been behind the booth before, I didn't really know what to expect. And it was a pretty cool vibe at the place. It seemed everybody was just super excited to be back in person and networking again, which kind of helped, I think, as well. But we had a good show. We had some very good comments coming through, which I can tell you about in a couple minutes. I don't want to waste everything in the first 2 seconds. But we were very happy with it.
And of course, Scott, you ran around the floor and took some interviews from some people, and I saw some of them, and I really thought that the vibe was very similar to what Rick is describing. People were just so relieved to actually have an opportunity to see each other, not on a Zoom call.
No doubt. I think the buzzword was energy. I mean, I think people have been cooped up, Jimmy, and David and everyone for, however long it's been since things went down. Right. And, this might have been for most of us really the first time to have an opportunity to get out and really network and meet obviously, whether people had clients, meet new businesses, hear speakers, and just get a sense of that, hey, collectively, there's a ton of positive momentum in the cannabis space. And I think that was my biggest takeaway that I got.
Yeah, I got re-energized. I really did. I mean, I'm now back looking at it from almost a 24/7 perspective as far as reaching out and building our reach and what have you on our side. Scott, why don't you walk people a little bit through HR Adaptive, what you do and your business model?
Sure. And just for the record, it's Adaptive HR, but
sorry,
it's Friday,
I'm looking at
worries.
It backwards, right? It's whatever. I'm sorry.
No worries. We knew what you mean. So so our business is, we are local to you, Jimmy, in Massachusetts, based in the Boston area. We've been doing it for a few years. And really what we do is we work with small and mid-sized cannabis operators who are in growth mode and really expanding their businesses. And they're running around like crazy and don't have all the time or the knowledge to keep up to date with all the changes in HR. Really, they want to attract and keep rock star employees, how to give them benefits, how to make sure they're not out of compliance. So they turn to us so they can focus on what they do best. And they know that they have the knowledge that there's a team behind them to really help them streamline and be the best businesses that they can and scale.
Right. And Accounting Buds, Rick, why don't you walk us through what's so special about your company?
Sure. Well, the first thing is, I'll go back to the convention for a second. I was shocked. This is one of the things that I was happy about and shocked about at the convention. The number of people that came up to my booth just to say, we don't need accounting services right now, but what you are doing for the industry is amazing. And we're very happy that you guys are here and we need more of you, was astounding. As an accountant, we're not used to that kind of love. We usually don't get any sort of love. So that was kind of amazing. But what we do is your typical accounting services. So we are outsourced bookkeeping and accounting, virtual or fractional CFO, whatever you want to call it. We also do strategic planning, advisory, you name it in the accounting space, we cover it. And we're actually starting to work on something with David as well that I won't announce yet, but we've got something new, a new product coming as well.
Yeah, I think that's great because the industry is in it. They realize that they're part of a historic movement. And Scott, I'm sure you handle that. You feel the same way that when people are looking for to fill employees and make hires, they have to have the passion in order to really be functioning members of this industry. It isn't just a job; it's really a cause. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the bulk of the people in the businesses, their employees, yes. I mean, are there a few people in it just, of course, to make money? without a doubt. But I think there's a ton of people in there who have really specific reasons why they've launched their businesses. I mean, there's a ton of businesses that are a lot easier to start than cannabis operations in the States, so, that whether there's people who are doing it because, hey, maybe a family member used cannabis and now they're on a mission to basically share that with the rest of the world. You have some people in it for effort, for social justice. You have some people who just really love the vision of building a team in a new ground opportunity. So and then what they're able to do is, because they're starting from the ground floor, is they're able to find the employees who would share the same passion and then build their teams. So to your point, that's what we're seeing a lot of in the space.
Hey, David, I'm going to ask you, now that you're going through the whole process of trying to find a location and maybe even build out, a dispensary of some kind, what's the kind of employee that you would like to have on your team?
You, Jimmy.
You don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
I was going to say, wait a second. You want to rethink that a minute? Because you
how much time do we have here?
Yeah.
Seriously, how important is passion when it comes to, if you want to commit to a job or responsibilities, don't you feel like you have to have a passion for the product too?
So back in the 1980s, one of my clients taught me something, and he said, sales is the ability to make your client as enthusiastic about your product as you are. And if you're not enthusiastic about it, you won't be able to sell it.
That's a good anecdote. I like that.
There's a lot of things, it depends upon the kind of business you have, whether it's retail and you're consumer facing or not. But a lot of the general ways that businesses evaluate folks doesn't necessarily work in the cannabis space, because some of the people you may want to evaluate may not look good on paper, but you meet them in person and they could be phenomenal, off the charts.
Absolutely.
And getting people who are passionate people tend to be interested and they want to learn more. I mean, I'm a perfect example, Jimmy. I smoked pot probably no more than 5 times in my life up until a few years ago. And I only got back into it as a result of being in the marijuana business. But when I started to get into this through just a consulting gig that happened, I was amazed at the industry, right? It's the first time I've ever seen a business that's illegal at the federal level, legal at the state level, and tolerated by the feds with defined guardrails. That's what I found so fascinating about it, right? And as you know, I've learned quite a bit about it. I speak at conferences. That's because I had some passion over it. If it was something I didn't have passion over, I wouldn't be the person to hire. And so I think the first thing you want to do, it's just like when investors are looking at businesses, they're often looking at the team first, the idea second, because a good team will pivot and get the business working. A great idea with a crappy team will probably fail. So,
we've talked to people like ArcView's Jeff Finkel about the importance of team.
Yeah, team is critical, and you want people who are passionate and who are excited about it and who just want to learn more. Right? Yeah. You get an accountant that says, I don't know, it's accounting, how hard it could be. You want somebody like a Rick who takes a look at it and says, no, it's really fascinating because you got to look at your cost of goods sold differently. And it's kind of challenging to figure out how you're going to put your income statement together. And you want to maximize your deductions because of 280E, right? That's probably why he did so well at NECANN, because he's got that passion over it. Same thing with Scott, right? You're worried about how am I going to provide all the benefits and how am I going to do all the back office? Maybe you're better off to outsource it to somebody, not who goes, oh, ho-hum marijuana, or am I going to be arrested? But somebody who understands it and has that passion for, let me tell you what we can do and how we can do it.
So Scott, as you pour over a gazillion resumes of applicants out there, how do you read passion in a resume?
Well, first of all, let me just tell you this, is that our business, Jimmy, is we're not really on the recruiting side.
Right. I know that.
So, yeah, that goes to some of the people who that's their expertise. Right. But what I would say is that working with companies who are doing a lot of hiring, I think it's two things. One is to David's point, obviously passion is important, but there's a couple other factors. One is, do you have transferable skills? Because because you have a lot of people who just because the cannabis industry, say in emerging states, is still fairly new, but perhaps that you have 10 plus years of operations experience, or maybe you have some people who are phenomenal in retail and now they could transfer it. So yes, it's great to have passion and that's important, but you also need to have transferable skills. You got to have traits like, can you be coachable? So there's a number of things so those are some of the key things is, do you have a combination of those things? And most importantly, I think to David's point, also a willingness to learn, because if you're set in your ways, I think it's an industry that will blow by it because it's a very fast pace. It changes all the time. Regulations change all the time. The companies are growing very quickly, and there's also a lot of acquisition. So if you're not the type of person who could step into this space and be ready to roll up your sleeves, and things can literally change every day, then perhaps this might not be the industry for you. But if you are, I think there's some phenomenal opportunities for people looking to get into this space, and there are a lot of them.
Yeah. And Rick Leneve, your observations when you start talking, we were able to socialize a little bit after the show as well. And I know you got to meet some of our friends of PCM, as it were. There's a common denominator in that, is that the passion is there, right?
For sure. The passion is there. Not that was surprising to me at all. I've seen the passion coming not from the cannabis world 2 years ago into the cannabis world. That passion has been one thing that's been obvious to me from the start. But I will say two things that's kind of related to what you guys have been talking about is, with regards to the passion, there's also the experience factor too. So when you ask David kind of what's different about this industry looking for people, experience. Like, it's very difficult to find people with experience, especially here in the Northeast. And I think, that goes to Scott's point about being trainable and adaptable and everything else. And frankly, I saw that at the show in the accounting space too. The number of people that came to my booth was mainly from smaller cannabis shops that said, my accountant doesn't know what they're doing. I just fired my accountant. Or my accountant told me, don't worry about 280E, put every expense into cost of goods sold. And, my jaw hit the floor. And I just the number of people that are in this industry, it's probably because they don't have a passion for the industry. They just see dollar signs. So they're not really into learning about what's going on. And they're just looking for the dollars.
And everybody's looking for their share of the dollars. That's for sure. It's one of the biggest motivating factors to get in there. Scott, you've been to a few NECANN shows, I think, in the past. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How comfortable were you in a COVID environment in there? I mean, we were talking about it earlier, 95% plus in masks, right?
I didn't see anybody without masks.
Without a mask, yeah.
I mean, I would put again, there might have been someone who was switching one for the other, but pretty much every single person, I think it was a requirement.
Right.
And I saw actually someone, who was like, hey, make sure, their mask was down, and someone actually pointed it out to someone. So I think everybody's looking out for each other at that show. To me, it was masks were a non-issue. Tons of the vendors, Jimmy, also had sanitizer. So I think it was a well done event in terms of keeping people safe.
Yeah, keeping people safe and comfort. And I also didn't feel like, sometimes at NECANN shows, there's so many people there, it is overwhelming. And in that regard, and Marc Shepard actually, was honest about it. He said, look, he knew that when it was open to the public, the business side of things was strong. But as soon as you open up the public to come in on that Saturday, Sunday, the numbers maybe weren't as strong as they were in the past. And yet in this particular year, as someone who was there, it was welcome. I was like, I'm glad there wasn't an overwhelming amount of people there. And Rick, your booth was so perfectly positioned. There was lots of space around it, which was great.
Yeah, he had an end unit. I mean,
end unit was
in a great spot.
Yeah, I got lucky. There was a booth set up next to me when I walked in, and the next day it wasn't there. And Jimmy did some recording and presenting from there, so it worked out really well.
That's right. And then we had you in the background too. We set up a mock set when we did our little interview, and so it was all good. Rick, you are going to also be at the New Jersey show in Atlantic City in a couple of weeks, correct?
It's 2 weeks from today. I go down there.
Yeah. Actually, Jimmy, I met Rick at an expo. That's where we originally met. Right before COVID went down a year and a half ago, March. So
it was like a day or two before they shut everything down.
So it wasn't NECANN, but Rick will be doing New Jersey. I won't be there, but Adaptive HR will have a booth up in Portland in Maine for NECANN Maine. So we're pretty excited about meeting some folks up in the Maine market.
Yeah, and what a great market that is, huh? I mean, first of all, they set records every month during vacation time, and it just seems to be growing exponentially up there. For a small, Maine only has 1 million people in the whole state, right? And yet there's still a vibrant cannabis community there, and needless to say, they have plenty of land to grow, even though the growing season isn't exactly long. There used to be a joke. I lived in Maine for 11 years. I love it up there. It's my second home, and it's July and winter. Those are the two seasons in Maine, and yet. You know what? They did pretty well in June. They did pretty well in August. And I'm going to go on a limb thinking that maybe even in September and October, they're going to set records up there now that they have a pretty vibrant adult use a program up in the state of Maine. Where do you guys go when you look at the expansion and that New Jersey, New York is still, barely starting their market, and the projections for that market are equal to California, which is just incredible when you think about how long California's been around with their medical program anyway, and having outdoor growth. If you had to pick a state that you think has the most upside, is it New York? I mean, just because of the sheer size of it, Scott?
Put me on the spot.
Sure, I am. That's what I do.
I would say long-term New York, absolutely. I would say short-term Michigan. I think Michigan, because where they are right now, they're much further along. I mean, they have, I think they went over $1 billion. They're not getting bogged down like Illinois and all the licensing challenges. And, you have a couple of strong metro markets, and you have a ton of interest there. So I think, right ahead of us, Michigan is one of the most rapidly growing markets, both ahead of us for adult and medical combined. So,
if you need a good intro, it just so happens that the new executive director of Normal, Michigan is a regular contributor to Weed Talk News. His name's Rick Thompson. So if you do need any intros in that area, we would be happy to make those intros for you. And of course, Rick Lanive, you're grandfathered into Michigan anytime you want to. You know that.
And I would say, actually, I may be biased living in New Jersey and being the vice chairman for the cannabis committee for the state of New York CPAs. I think, though, those two markets combined are going to be gigantic. I heard someone say it, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I'll repeat it just because I heard it, that the two New Jersey and New York markets combined will be bigger than the rest of the U.S. currently is if you take out California.
Oh, wow.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Great for you, Rick.
Yeah, exactly.
he's doing one of these.
That's right. Well, you know what? I've always said this. If you're in the industry now and you can survive the beginning of it and get to the next year and then the next year, because I really do see year over year growth every time. And even during the pandemic, that's perhaps is lost on a lot of us that, Pro Cannabis Media adapted to the pandemic and we made it work for us. And I see a lot of others companies out there. I can't tell you how many I talked to on the floor of NECANN basically said, well, we started our company in March of 2020 and we weren't able to do anything for 18 months. And yet they were still able to survive and get to this show where they said, this is our first show. We're just so excited to be here. I heard that over and over and over again. David, you too. I know you're in the trenches of this business. You know that people are very bullish on the future of the cannabis industry here in Massachusetts and all over. Wait, you're going to unmute yourself and comment?
Jimmy, you could either have me muted or you could have the dogs barking like crazy because they're waiting. So I thought muting was better.
Muting was better, but at this point, if the dogs are barking, we know who let them out.
Right. So, your question again?
I'm just asking you for an overall assessment of the industry's growth over the last 18 months and the survival rate of the people that have been in it.
So I think it's huge. I think it depends. The survival rate of people who are in it is very, very localized. I'm hearing rumors that that the delivery couriers in Massachusetts, some of them are already having massive problems, right? They're just not making money.
Uh-huh.
And
I've heard the same.
Some have pulled out of real estate and that sort of thing. And I think we're going to go through and see a lot of challenges. I was on the phone. I had a call today. Now I'm going to have Bo Whitney of Whitney Economics. He with New Frontier Data, publishes a lot of really insightful stuff. And we were talking about a show that we have coming up that I'll leak a little bit here. Within a few weeks, we're going to do a show on the interstate transport of cannabis across state lines from one state to another state. I think it's going to be one of the better shows that we've done. And I think that issue could turn this industry on its head. And according to Professor Robert Mikos of Vanderbilt Law, he doesn't think that it needs federal legalization to go across state lines. In his view, we could ship it across state lines today, and that the states don't have the authority to block that kind of interstate commerce. It's going to be a fascinating discussion, but if he's correct and somebody decides they're going to sue a cannabis commission over it so that they do have interstate transport, you've got people in California who are complaining they can sell they sell weed for hundreds of dollars a pound right now because there's so much product out there. And back here, it's $3,000-$4,000.
Right.
All you got to do is take this rather lightweight product, get it onto a plane, ship it across the country, and look at how much money you make, which means that markets like New Jersey, where Rick is, that are just starting up, or New York, which is going to be just starting up, imagine if day one, they can get product because they can go to other states.
Right.
It changes the industry. Right.
Changes the industry, 100%. And I know there's actually a company that's going to be announced in a few weeks at Burns and Levinson that has a disruptive component to the industry as well. I'm not going to tease it any more than that, but you will be hearing about a disruptive force in the industry coming in a couple of weeks too. This is what we like to do on Green Rush Live. It's a talk show. We do it every Friday here from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. Scott, I just appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate you stepping up and becoming a multimedia journalist. I was so impressed with that story. I was like, man, this is great. And with no instruction, you went out there and you just did a couple of stand-ups. That was great. Whoever your video guy was, do you want to give him a plug? Because they did a great job.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to. It's John Campbell from Blind Eye Video up in New Hampshire. He's been doing it for a number of years. So he might be joining us at NECANN in Maine. So we'll have the conversation about that. But big shout out to him. He did a great job.
And thank you so much for Adaptive HR. Did I get it right this time?
Spot on.
Yeah, it's what I have to just read something in order to remember it. What can I tell you? Rick Leneve from Accounting Buds. People know how to get to you. All they have to do is watch our show and find you because you're always part of our story here. And I thank you for all the contributions you make. David, as always, a pleasure hanging out with you. Next week, we are putting together a cannabis tourism show. And I happen to think that the tourism side of this industry is going to be huge in so many capacities, and some are starting to get into it already, including a special inn in Maine that our friend Janet McAllister is involved with up in Dexter, Maine, and she would be known as the hippie chick. So we'll talk more about the cannabis tourism industry next week on Green Rush Live. But for now, for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Stay tuned for this week's Weed Talk News Show. That's coming up next. Don't go away. Coming up on Weed Talk News this week, the nation's mayors want weed legal now. Sports figures and rappers are asking the president to do the same. Now, there are reports that the Biden administration might actually do something symbolic on cannabis reform, but how soon? Plus, Weedmaps acquires a CRM and marketing platform called Sprout as they continue to expand their business footprint. Plus, NECANN returns to Boston as the face-to-face cannabis trade show is back after the pandemic break. Had enough? No. Okay, we visit a state-of-the-art adult-use dispensary in the Bay State as we go inside INSA in Springfield on We Talk News next. PCM TV is supported by Salient Systems, a world leader in video management security, and by Revolutionary Clinics, a medical dispensary where the patient comes first, and by Accounting Buds, your number one CPA specialist for the cannabis industry.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News for this week. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. We continue to ask you to share your cannabis story with us. You could win a t-shirt or a great cannabis storage device. So go online to our website, procannabismedia.com, and enter. All you have to do is come out of the cannabis closet and you could win with your story with an I.com. First up on We Talk News this week, an update on federal cannabis reform. That's where you'll find mounting pressure on President Joe Biden to just do something about it. You might remember in July, it was the U.S. Senate leadership that started the public discussion, and now the nation's mayors and pop culture icons are calling on the president to legalize cannabis, expunge the records of nonviolent cannabis criminals, and even at the meeting of the nation's mayors, that association voted to remove cannabis from the Controlled Substances Act, end cannabis possession crimes, and expunge past cannabis convictions, and also restore all voting rights for former prisoners. Now, on Green Rush Live on Friday the 10th, we talked with Michael Correa, the NCIA's Director of Government Relations, about the next steps.
I'm not feeling confident, but when I think we did a phone call probably 8 months ago, or we did one of these shows like 8 months ago, and I said, I'm more optimistic now than I've been in 8 years, but it doesn't mean I think legalization or some type of reform is going to happen. Right. And I'll be honest with you, watching that, and we call it KOA, other people call it CAO Act. So, call it chaos, call it whatever you want. We call it KOA, so I'll use that acronym.
Okay.
During this whole process, it is a little eye-opening to how such a big, heavy lift this is going to be, and how many stakeholder groups are going to have to be part of this. And right. I've been in DC 25 years. For something really big like this, historic, to happen, you need stakeholder groups. You need a lot of momentum, the public behind it, and a lot of support. The public is supportive of this, but are they protesting on the streets? Are they calling members of Congress to say, do this now or else? Not really. And that's one big issue. The second issue, the White House is not signaling to Capitol Hill, get this right. done and get this done soon.
Right.
And, quite the contrary, they almost were like, hey, slow down. We don't want something like this. This is what we're thinking. So to me, I'm not being pessimistic. The conditions aren't ripe right now for something good, but the discussion is being had. You have the highest ranking Senate leader who is pushing his bill, who's having a discussion. And that in itself is important. So to me, like, the next big thing will be when this bill drops, whenever that is, how many co-sponsors are on it? And then what type of traction is this getting with advocates, with industry? What's the buzz around something like this? And if it's a non-starter and it's DOA and no one's talking about it, then we're going to have to pivot and move on to something else and then see where we go. Whether that's incremental, whether that's the MORE Act, whether that's something else. But that's sort of where I'm at now. I just, honestly, I don't want to wait 6 months for that to happen. I would like it sooner rather than later, like in the next 2 months or something. So then we can have a strategy going into 2022.
On this week's Green Rush Live show on PCM TV 24/7, our live streaming channel, we will talk with Jaret Christopher, the CEO of Sprout, who was just acquired by Weedmaps, one of the nation's largest cannabis companies. Merger and acquisitions continue in the cannabis space. Here's Deborah Borchardt from the Green Market Report. Deborah?
I'm Deborah Borchardt, and this is the business update for Weed Talk News from the Green Market Report. This week, the FDA issued a warning about Delta 8. As you know, this is a gray area in the cannabis industry, many claiming Delta 8 is legal, while others saying it is not. The FDA's opinion, though, on anything cannabis related is received with a healthy dose of skepticism because they still haven't made a determination on CBD. Anyway, the notice described 22 hospitalizations from Delta 8 side effects, while the Poison Control Center reported over 600 cases. Now, in a sign of how difficult it is to be a CBD-only company, this week Plus Products filed for the Canadian version of bankruptcy. Now, according to the Plus filing, it has secured court protection from its creditors in order to restructure its business and financial affairs, and Plus Products also canceled its annual general meeting that was previously scheduled for September 14th. And finally, Acreage Holdings sold its 4 Oregon dispensaries to Chalice Brands in a deal valued at $6.5 million. Acreage's 4 Oregon retail dispensaries are branded as Cannabis, and the sale will end the company's presence in the state. Acreage said in a statement that the Oregon stores were negatively affecting the company's bottom line, while Chalice says it thinks it can turn these stores around. I'm Deborah Borchardt, and this has been your business update from the Green Market Report for Weed Talk News.
Since July 1, New Jersey has expunged over 360,000 cannabis cases, according to NJ.com. In Illinois, the number of expunged cannabis crimes is 500,000, and in California, it's 200,000 cases expunged or dismissed. In Minnesota, medical dispensaries are now teaming up with volunteer attorneys to clear the records of nonviolent cannabis criminals in that state. In Michigan, of course, it's all normal. In fact, it's normal. And their executive director is our own Rick Thompson. Here's his weekly Michigan Cannabis Report. Rick?
This is the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News. Let's begin. Hundreds of cannabis rights supporters gathered at the Capitol building in Lansing Wednesday, September 15th. Advocates rose in protest over the introduction of a trio of bills which proposed changes to Michigan's patient and caregiver laws. The changes would disadvantage the state's 12-year-old patient and caregiver system by cutting 80% of the number of patients a caregiver can grow for. The proposal also gives law enforcement access to the addresses of caregivers in their municipality, which is information that's been protected since 2008 by a privacy and confidentiality clause. The bills would also eliminate the use of flammable solvents in the creation of concentrated marijuana products. Advocates were joined by Michigan House Rep Cynthia Johnson, and an appearance was made by the state's youngest cannabis patient. For the first time ever, there was open smoking on the grounds of the Capitol building under the watchful eye of the Michigan State Police. The 4-hour event featured music and speakers and information tables from caregiver and consumer advocacy groups like NORML and Americans for Safe Access. A new piece of public relations masquerading as science has made an appearance. The Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, the same people who pushed the legislature to introduce the 3 bills I just discussed, has released a survey which finds the majority of Michigan residents wants cannabis for human consumption tested. The poll seems to put pressure on the Marijuana Regulatory Agency to initiate rules forcing 30,000 caregivers to submit their cannabis to the 13 testing labs in Michigan, which are licensed to accept cannabis. The release of this poll, just 24 hours after the introduction of bills asking for tighter restrictions on caregivers, is purely political and detracts from the credibility of the study, the companies which conducted them, and the trade association which structure the questions in such a biased manner. Michigan is a combat zone once again, 12 years after medical marijuana became law, and neither side is backing down. And that's it for the Michigan Report with Rick Thompson for Weed Talk News.
The World Anti-Doping Agency, called WADA in the sports world, has appointed a scientific research review to consider removing cannabis as a banned substance. WADA did say cannabis will remain on the list of prohibited substances that is released on October 1st. But this review will be due next year. Now, you might remember that U.S. Olympic sprinter Sha'Carri Richardson was suspended from the Olympics this year after testing positive for THC. Now it's time for the Vermont Report with our own green nurse from Vermont, Jessie Lynn Dolan. Jessie Lynn?
Thanks, Jimmy. I'm Jessie Lynn Dolan from Nurse Grown Organics and Vermont Cannabis Nurses, and this is the Weed Talk News Vermont Report. The Burn Gallery's 15th annual Pipe Classic is firing up. Spanning an entire week from September 20th to 25th, the event consists of dozens of contests, gatherings, and parties, all centered around a fierce virtual competition between some of the world's finest glassblowers. To cast your official vote on the best glass and get more info, visit burngallery.com. Friday, September 17th, the Starksboro Hemp Farm Viterra is holding a barbecue and fundraiser for the GCS Project, which provides help and hope for women with gynecological carcinosarcoma tumors. The ticket price includes farm fresh food prepared by Chef Phil Clayton and music of Mal Mays and his 7-piece Latin band with Danielle Gaviria opening with classical Colombian guitar. Hosted by Vermontuana, Saturday, September 18th, is the 3rd annual Green Finders Invitational Golf Tournament, with putting, long drive, and joint rolling competitions. Fox Holler Farms in Plainfield, Vermont is hosting a Bud and Brunch on September 25th. Tickets are $10 and include free brunch with beverages available for purchase, along with live music, local food, and featured Vermont cannabis exhibitors. Learn more at vermontuana.com. That's the Vermont Report for Weed Talk News. I'm Vermont's cannabis nurse, Jessie Lynn Dolan.
In Massachusetts this past week, the New England Cannabis Convention returned to Boston's Heinz Auditorium with hundreds of exhibitors, industry workshops, and community awards and awards for Best Cannabis Business, Best Products, and Best Strains. This was the 6th annual NECANN in Boston, with their next show scheduled for New Jersey the first weekend in October. For many, it was the first face-to-face cannabis show that they've ever attended, and the response was overwhelmingly positive.
This has probably been the best weekend I've had in the past 2 years. In all honesty, it was definitely needed to get face-to-face and reconnect with people and just be present and exposed to the cannabis culture again, because it's just such a beautiful community.
It's key. I mean, having that personal touch is what makes a lot of our businesses grow. And, it's so nice seeing the events that are coming back. Just myself, just this week, we've been here since Friday. We probably had 150 people, 200 people stop in asking about the products. So, and everybody said, we always ask them, hey, what do you think about having an in-person show again? They're like, we love it. We are so glad it's back. So obviously we all got to take precautions, but at the end of the day, it's been great. And this is hopefully one of many shows here the rest of this year. We got NECANN New Jersey, shout out to them, and then we got some shows in New York. So make sure I see all of you guys there.
This is actually our first conference we've been to anywhere. I've walked around at some, never had a booth. Exceeded my expectations by far. I got a lot of good quality leads. I was kind of thinking this would just be a practice conference for me, to be honest with you, because I've never done this before. And I was shocked at the leads I got, and some of them are, big money potentially ones. So I'm very happy with how this turned out.
Weedmaps is one of the largest cannabis companies in the world, valued at over $3.5 billion. They went public this year, and now they're starting to merge and acquire other companies. One of their acquisitions this week is with a customer relations management and marketing software company that specifically caters to the cannabis industry. That company is called Sprout. The CEO of this Massachusetts-based company is Jaret Christopher, and he'll be joining us live at 4 p.m. for the start of the Green Rush Live, our weekly talk show focused on the business of cannabis on Friday. Weedmaps CEO Chris Beals is bullish on this acquisition and said, quote, "With the addition of Sprout, we are one step closer to realizing this vision of providing an all-in-one seamless and integrated solution to run, manage, and grow one's cannabis business," unquote. One more item in the Bay State that deems mentioning is one of the first adult use dispensaries that is definitely worth a trip to Springfield, a destination dispensary, if you will. It's called INSA, and we visited their East Hampton facility this week, as well as their Springfield facility, which is right down the road from the Basketball Hall of Fame. What a beautiful facility. How much fun is it for you to come to work every day at a cannabis dispensary?
It's amazing. Every day is a blast. My associates, they all love it. We have a great team. We have over 50 associates here, which is great for Springfield. But it's an absolute blast to come here and walk into this beautiful facility every single day.
We have a whole bunch more content from our visit to INSA in both East Hampton and in Springfield, and a profile of Julian Rose, the Director of Research and Development, which is a fancy name for edible creator. That will be coming sometime soon on PCM TV. News from D.C. is focused not on the legalization effort, but rather warnings from the FDA and the CDC about the dangers of products using Delta-8 THC. Now, this is the form of THC that is not derived from the plant, but operates in a gray area because it is created in a lab using legal hemp. Now, you can find Delta-8 oils and other products in non-legal cannabis states, and even in some legal states have even banned its sale and its use. It's the variants of effects from Delta-8 that have most government officials concerned. For the rest of the news from our nation's capital, here's Vote Pro podcast Phil Adams with our DC report. Phil?
The Congressional Committee has decided that students with felony drug convictions can be eligible to claim a valuable tax credit. The House Ways and Means Committee agreed to drop the aid elimination penalty, which prevents students convicted of felony drug offenses from receiving the American Opportunity Tax Credit. The penalty was imposed in 1998 as part of the reauthorization of the Higher Education Act. The AOTC allows for a $2,500 annual tax credit for certain education expenses incurred during the first 4 years of college. The measure to lift the ban was included in the budget reconciliation bill approved this week. The National Defense Authorization Act could be the latest vehicle for passing cannabis banking reform. Lawmakers in the House have introduced a number of drug policy-related amendments to the NDAA, including a measure to prevent federal regulators from penalizing financial institutions for serving state legal cannabis businesses. That amendment was introduced by Representative Ed Perlmutter of Colorado. Perlmutter also sponsored the standalone Safe Banking Act, versions of which have passed the House on 4 separate occasions. His latest amendment is virtually identical to those previous bills. 2 federal agencies have issued warnings to cannabis consumers about the risks associated with Delta-8 THC. Both the Food and Drug Administration and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have said they have seen a significant increase in reports of adverse health effects from people who are using the synthetic cannabinoid. Unlike naturally occurring Delta-9 THC, there are generally no laws governing the use or sale of Delta-8 products, which have become widely available both in states that have legalized and those that have not. The FDA in particular says they've received numerous reports of people experiencing symptoms such as vomiting, hallucinations, trouble standing, and loss of consciousness after using Delta-8 products. The agency advises that Delta-8 THC has not been evaluated as safe or approved for use in any context. That's the latest cannabis news from our nation's capital. I'm Phil Adams from Vote Pro Podcast.
There's a new study in the Journal of the American Medical Association about teen use of cannabis in legal states. It supports past results of other studies that show in legal states over the past 28 years, teen use of cannabis has decreased by 7 or 8%, depending on the frequency of use. Now, this totally refutes any argument for prohibitionists who continue to use the old, "what about the kids" question in argument when they're blocking the implementation of cannabis reform. In New Jersey, the new state's Regulatory Cannabis Commission met to approve the transfer of an existing medical marijuana license. However, the process of any new licenses being issued or expanding the number of medical dispensaries continues to be stalled in that state. Patience Garden State cannabis enthusiasts, it will happen. It could be worse. You could be actually issuing licenses and then holding them for months, like the state of Illinois. That's what they're doing with their social equity applicants. And with the latest on the Illinois cannabis market, here's Margot Vaselli. Margot?
Margot Vaselli from Margowana with this week's We Talk News Report from Illinois. Since last month's winners were announced, Illinois winners should be celebrating license wins. But instead, new license holders are stuck awaiting for judges' orders. Out of the 184 dispensary licenses awarded, none of them have broke ground, since they're still awaiting to hear back from the state if their licenses are in fact theirs to keep. The craft grow licensors are facing hard hits themselves. From competing with Amazon for construction supplies, to securing real estate in cannabis-friendly neighborhoods, to understanding distribution and sales practices of incumbent retailers, the fortunate few planting seeds for Illinois cannabis expansion are hitting walls in every direction. That's the Illinois Report. I'm Margot Vaselli with this week's We Talk News.
The big news out of California this week is that their governor, Gavin Newsom, will remain in office. But is that a good thing for the cannabis industry? Here's the California Report with Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report. Christopher?
I'm Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report, bringing you the California Roundup for Weed Talk News. California Governor Gavin Newsom sweeps the floor, wins the recall election by 28 points. California's cannabis industry remained largely neutral in the election. We're not happy with many of the regulatory problems, and the governor hails from the wine industry, so he can be kind of a lukewarm ally. My biggest concern, his political instinct seems to be more stick and less carrot. And that strategy is doomed to fail in California cannabis. It may sound counterintuitive, but to truly grow our industry, Governor Newsom needs to lower taxes, lower the barriers to entry, especially for BIPOC people, and leave the stick, take the carrot. The famed Emerald Triangle in Northern California is suffering from drought, wildfires, and now racism. A federal judge has ruled that Siskiyou County officials cannot stop water trucks from delivering water to Hmong farmers, even though they might be growing cannabis illegally. The practice, which doesn't seem to happen to white farmers, leaves Hmong growers and their families without a source of water for drinking, bathing, and even growing food. It's pure racial discrimination. It's deeply embarrassing. If you're Cheech and Chong, would you call your cannabis company Eighth Icon Holdings? Well, surely not for long. The cannabis company, the comedy team has officially changed the name to Cheech and Chong's Cannabis Company, effective immediately. Products include Tommy Chong's Cannabis and Cheech's Stash, and my favorite, Cheech and Chong's Dispensoria, for retail, opening soon in San Francisco and LA. And speaking of LA, if you're downtown and you catch a whiff of a very interesting pizza, you might have found cannabis chef Koshka Hopkinson. His shop is called Stony Slice, which serves classic pizza with a special topping of God's favorite plant. The shop exists in the, let's call it, undefined world where cannabis and food are just starting to dance. Not ready for a storefront, not legal for dispensaries. I know where I'll be this weekend. And I'm Christopher Smith from the American Cannabis Report, reporting for Weed Talk News.
And finally, congratulations to our friends at the Cleveland School of Cannabis. They are collaborating with Al Harrington of Viola Brands to create the Harrington Institute, a school for cannabis education. There will be scholarships available for students who have been most impacted by the failed war on drugs, and you can find out more about this at the website of the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Now, there's another initiative in the state of Ohio that will help formerly incarcerated people for cannabis crimes get jobs. Riviera Creek and advocacy group United Returning Citizens are partnering to create a program to help ex-cons learn how to grow cannabis and become eligible for employment in the industry. This is exactly the type of private enterprise that is needed if the legalization movement will continue. More and more sentences for nonviolent cannabis crimes are being expunged, and hundreds of thousands of people are leaving our nation's jails. They all need opportunities and training to become contributing members of society as employees for this growing industry. It's all about rehab, training, and education. Well, that will do it for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Difference is building a solution for that individual. Not just a custom, here's a box, here's a video, here's how you make your VMS. We custom design and custom build every situation for exactly what the customer needs. And we keep the cost low. We have multiple tiers, as far as what you're looking at on the cost side of things. If you want a one-time, where you just pay one initial cost, we have that. If you want to maintain your system and have the highest protection and highest capabilities and highest upgrades at all times, we have different plans for you. But we scale it so it's scalable and affordable 100%.
Pro Cannabis Media programming is available live and on demand on our Facebook page at Pro Canna Media, on Instagram at Pro Cannabis Media, on LinkedIn also at Pro Cannabis Media, on YouTube and YouTube Live on Pro Cannabis Media, Twitter at Pro Canna Media, and on twitch.tv/Pro Cannabis Media. So like, share, and subscribe to all of our content, newsletters, and shows live or on demand.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.